I used to think I had it all figured out. 8 years of marriage. A beautiful 6-year-old daughter named Emma, who had my eyes and her mother's smile. A 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb with a 2-car garage and a swing set in the backyard. Jennifer and I weren't rich, but we were comfortable. I worked as a project manager at a tech firm. She was a marketing coordinator at some corporate office downtown. We had weekend barbecues, school fundraisers, date nights every other Friday. From the outside, we looked perfect. I'm Evan, 35 years old, the kind of man who fixes the leaky faucet before calling a plumber, who plans vacations 6 months in advance, who doesn't lose his temper easily. My father raised me to be steady, dependable, a builder, not a destroyer. I trusted my wife completely. Maybe that was my first mistake. The cracks started showing about 3 months ago, though I didn't want to see them at first. Jennifer became distant. Not all at once. It was subtle, like watching a photograph fade in sunlight. She stopped initiating intimacy. Then she stopped responding to it. Our bedroom became a cold war zone of turned backs and mumbled excuses. "I'm tired," she'd say, turning away from me. "I have an early meeting," she'd murmur another night. "Maybe this weekend," she'd promise, but the weekend never came. She started going to the gym 5 nights a week. New workout clothes appeared in her closet, expensive ones, tight ones, nothing like the oversized t-shirts she used to wear. Her phone became an extension of her hand, always face down on the table, always out of reach. She started taking calls in the bathroom with the door locked, her voice a muffled whisper through the walls. Girls' nights became a weekly ritual. She'd leave at 7 and stumble in around 2 in the morning, smelling like wine and perfume I didn't recognize. When I asked about it, gently, carefully, because I didn't want to seem controlling, she turned it around on me. "Why are you interrogating me, Evan?" she snapped one evening. "I'm not interrogating you, I'm just—" I started to explain. "You're acting paranoid. Insecure," she interrupted, crossing her arms, her eyes cold. "You've been listening to too many of those toxic masculinity podcasts, haven't you? I'm allowed to have a life outside this house." That's when the gaslighting started. Every question I asked became proof of my dysfunction, my inadequacy, my weakness. She made me doubt my own eyes, my own instincts. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was the problem. But then the details kept piling up. One Tuesday evening, I noticed she'd changed her phone passcode. The 4-digit code that had been Emma's birthday for 3 years was suddenly something else. When I mentioned it casually, she laughed it off. "Oh, I keep forgetting it, so I changed it to something easier," she said dismissively. She started showering the moment she walked through the door after work. Not after dinner, not before bed. Immediately. Like she needed to wash something off her skin. I found new lingerie in her drawer. Black lace, red silk, things I'd never seen her wear. When I asked about it, she said she bought it for herself, to feel confident. But I never saw it on her. Not once. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon. I left work early. A client meeting got canceled, and came home around 4. Jennifer's car was in the driveway. I walked in through the garage expecting to surprise her, maybe suggest we grab an early dinner. Instead, I found her at the kitchen table, laptop open, face flushed, frantically closing windows on the screen. "Evan! Jesus, you scared me! What are you doing home?" she gasped, slamming the laptop shut. "Meeting got canceled. What are you—" I began to ask. "Nothing. Just work stuff. A presentation." She cut me off, her voice too high, too fast. I stood there, staring at her. My wife, the mother of my child, the woman I'd trusted with everything. And I knew. I didn't say anything. I kissed her on the forehead, grabbed a water bottle from the fridge, and went upstairs to change. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I thought she could hear it. That night, lying in bed beside her, listening to her steady breathing as she slept, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I was going to know. Everything. Every lie, every betrayal, every moment she thought she was getting away with it. And then I was going to act. I stared at the ceiling in the darkness, her warm body inches from mine, and whispered to myself, "I'm not crazy, and I'm not weak. I'm just patient." I became a ghost in my own life. For the next 2 weeks, I smiled at breakfast. I kissed her goodbye at the door. I texted her during the day. "How's work?" "Love you." And she replied with the same empty pleasantries. At night, I tucked Emma into bed, read her stories about princesses and dragons, then crawled into bed next to a woman I no longer recognized. But inside, I was building a case. The first step was the GPS tracker. Our cars were jointly owned, both in both our names, which meant I had every legal right to install a tracking device. I bought a small magnetic unit online, the kind private investigators use, and attached it under Jennifer's rear bumper one morning while she was still getting ready. It synced to an app on my phone. Within 3 days, I had my first anomaly. Tuesday night. Yoga class from 7 to 9, she'd told me. Except the GPS showed her car parked at a condo complex on the north side of town, 15 miles from the yoga studio she claimed to attend. She stayed there for 2 hours and 17 minutes. The pattern repeated. Every Tuesday and Thursday. Same location, same duration. I didn't confront her. I needed more. The second step was hiring a professional. A friend from college, Mike, a corporate attorney, referred me to a private investigator named Tony Greco. Retired cop, 25 years on the force, now running a small agency specializing in infidelity cases. We met at a diner on a Saturday morning while Jennifer thought I was at a work conference. Tony was in his late 50s, gray beard, tired eyes. He listened to my story without interrupting, then pulled out a notepad. "I need photos," I told him directly. "Video if possible. I need to know who she's with." "How long has this been going on?" he asked, pen hovering over paper. "I don't know. 2 months? 3? I answered honestly. Tony nodded slowly. "It'll take me a week, maybe less. I'll follow her Tuesday and Thursday. Get what you need. It's not cheap." "I don't care what it costs," I said firmly. He gave me a flat rate, $3,000. I paid half up front, in cash. 6 days later, Tony sent me a text. "Got what you need. Let's meet." We met at the same diner. He handed me a manila envelope. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Jennifer's car pulling into the condo complex. Jennifer walking toward a specific unit, 312, carrying a bottle of wine. A man opening the door. Tall, athletic build, dark hair, mid-30s. They kissed. Not a peck. A real kiss, hands in hair, bodies pressed together. More photos, them leaving together hours later, her adjusting her clothes, him with his hand on her lower back. Tony also handed me a printed report. "His name is Derek Brennan. 38, divorced, sales director at your wife's company," he explained, tapping the document. "He's been living in that condo for about a year. From what I can tell, they've been seeing each other at least twice a week for the past 2 months. I stared at the photos. My hands didn't shake. I felt nothing. Just cold, perfect clarity. "There's more," Tony continued, sliding a USB drive across the table. "I pulled some deleted texts from your shared iCloud account. You'll want to read these." That night, after Jennifer went to bed, I sat in my home office and opened the files on the USB drive. The texts were worse than the photos. "Derek, can't wait to see you Thursday. Wear that black thing I like." Jennifer, "You're insatiable, LOL. What if he finds out?" Derek, "He won't. He's clueless." Jennifer, "I know. He doesn't even notice when I come home late anymore. It's kind of sad." Derek, "So when are you leaving him?" Jennifer, "Soon. I need to figure out the finances first. And Emma, it's complicated." Derek, "Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. I read every message, hundreds of them, explicit photos she'd sent him, plans they'd made, Jokes about me, about how oblivious I was, how easy it was to fool me. She'd even consulted a divorce attorney 2 weeks ago. I found the email confirmation buried in her spam folder. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark. She wasn't just cheating. She was planning. Planning to leave, to take Emma, to drain our accounts and start over with this piece of garbage. Not if I moved first. The next morning, I called Audrey Delgado, a divorce attorney Mike had recommended. The Bulldog, he'd called her. A woman who specialized in high-conflict cases and didn't lose. Audrey met with me that afternoon. I showed her everything. The GPS logs, the photos, the texts, the emails. She leaned back in her chair and smiled. "Mr. Hayes, your wife just handed you the keys to the kingdom," she said with satisfaction. "Don't confront her, don't tip your hand, let me file first, and when we're ready, we'll hit her so hard she won't know what happened." I also told one other person, my younger brother Jake, 32, former Marine, current construction foreman, the kind of man who asked one question and meant it. "What do you need?" he said when I called him. "I'll let you know," I replied quietly. The chapter closed with me sitting in my truck outside that condo complex on a Thursday night, watching Jennifer's car pull into the parking lot. I texted Jake a single line. "Next Tuesday, 7 p.m., I'll explain everything." Revenge, I learned, is about control. It's not about yelling or breaking things or making a scene. It's about being 3 steps ahead while your enemy thinks they're winning. Jennifer thought she was so careful, so clever. She had no idea I'd been dismantling her life brick by brick for the past 2.5 weeks. Audrey Delgado worked fast. Within 3 days of our first meeting, she had the divorce papers drawn up, exhaustive, devastating, and strategically brutal. But we didn't serve them yet. That would come later, right after the confrontation, giving Jennifer 0 time to hide assets or coordinate with her own attorney. "The key is that you filed first," Audrey explained during our second meeting, leaning forward with her hands clasped. "In this state, that gives you leverage. We're citing adultery as grounds, which impacts everything: custody, alimony, asset division. She's already consulted an attorney, but she hasn't filed yet. She's waiting, probably trying to figure out how to maximize her payout. Big mistake. Audrey also helped me lock down the finances. I opened a separate bank account and quietly transferred half of our joint savings, legally mine. I changed the direct deposit for my paycheck. I documented every shared expense, every asset, every debt. If Jennifer thought she was going to walk away with the house and a fat settlement, she was delusional. But the legal strategy was only part of the plan. I wanted her to feel what I felt: the humiliation, the betrayal, the loss of control. And for that, I needed to go beyond the courtroom. Step 2, the social angle. I did some digging on Derek. Turns out his boss at Jennifer's company was a woman named Carol Simmons, VP of Sales, mid-40s, known for running a tight ship. Corporate professionalism was her religion. Workplace affairs were her kryptonite. I didn't contact Carol directly, not yet. But I sent an anonymous email to HR, carefully worded, no direct accusations, just concerns about inappropriate conduct between Jennifer Hayes and Derek Brennan. I included vague references to after-hours meetings and unprofessional behavior. I knew HR would start asking questions, and once they did, the whole thing would unravel. I also reached out to a few key people in Jennifer's social circle, casually, indirectly. Her best friend Melissa, for example. I called her one evening under the guise of planning a surprise birthday party for Jennifer. "Has she seemed stressed to you lately?" I asked, my voice genuinely concerned. "She's been working so much, staying late. I just want to make sure she's okay." Melissa hesitated on the other end of the line. "Well, she did mention she's been dealing with a difficult coworker. Maybe that's it?" she offered uncertainly. "Yeah, maybe," I agreed sympathetically. I planted the seed. When the truth came out, Melissa, and everyone else, would remember this conversation. They'd realize Jennifer had been lying to them too. But the centerpiece of my plan was the confrontation itself. I knew Jennifer's schedule by heart now. Every Tuesday and Thursday, yoga class from 7 to 9, she'd say. Except it wasn't yoga. It was Derek's condo, Unit 312, third floor. I'd been watching the building for a week. Security was a joke. One bored guard at the front desk who barely looked up from his phone. Jake and I planned it carefully. We'd wait until Jennifer's car was in the parking lot, then walk in like we belonged there. No masks, no theatrics, just two men paying a visit. "What's the goal here?" Jake asked me the night before. We were sitting in his garage drinking beer, the smell of sawdust and motor oil thick in the air. "I want her to see me," I explained, my voice steady. "I want her to know that I know. And I want Derek to understand there are consequences." Jake nodded slowly. "How far are we taking this?" he asked carefully. "As far as it needs to go," I replied without hesitation. He didn't ask anything else. I also prepared for the aftermath. I packed a bag for myself, clothes, toiletries, documents. I packed one for Emma, too, her favorite stuffed animal, some books, a week's worth of outfits. We'd be staying at my parents' house for a while. I'd already called them, explained the situation. My father's response was simple. "The door's always open, son," he'd said firmly. I notified Emma's school about potential custody issues. I spoke to the principal directly, handed her a copy of Audrey's temporary custody filing. "If my wife tries to pick Emma up without my permission, you call me immediately," I instructed her seriously. She nodded, understanding the gravity. "Of course, Mr. Hayes." I also changed the locks on our house. Legally, I was allowed. My name was on the deed, and I wasn't barring her from retrieving her belongings. But she wouldn't be walking back into my home like nothing had happened. On Monday night, I sat at the kitchen table with Emma, helping her with her homework. She was working on a drawing, a house, a tree, a sun with a smiley face. "Daddy, are you okay?" she asked suddenly, looking up at me with those big brown eyes. I smiled gently. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just thinking," I reassured her. "About what?" she pressed innocently. "About how lucky I am to have you," I answered truthfully. She grinned and went back to coloring. Jennifer walked in a few minutes later, keys jangling, phone in hand. She kissed Emma on the head, then glanced at me. "I've got yoga tomorrow night. Can you pick up Emma from dance?" she asked casually. "Sure," I said, my voice perfectly even. "No problem." She smiled, oblivious, confident, untouchable, and walked upstairs. I looked at Jake's last text on my phone. "Ready when you are." I replied, "Tomorrow, 7 p.m. Derek's place. Don't be late." Then I deleted the message and slipped the phone back into my pocket. Tuesday, 6:47 p.m. Jake and I sat in my truck across the street from Derek's condo complex, engine off, windows cracked. The evening air was cool, carrying the faint smell of fresh-cut grass and distant grilling. Normalcy. Meanwhile, my heart was a steady drumbeat in my chest. Not panic, not fear. Just cold, focused purpose. "You sure about this?" Jake asked quietly, his voice low. I didn't answer right away. I watched the parking lot entrance, waiting. At 6:52, Jennifer's silver Honda pulled in. She parked near the side entrance, checked her phone, then stepped out. She was wearing black leggings, a fitted top, her yoga outfit. Her hair was down, loose around her shoulders. She looked beautiful. She always did. I felt nothing. "Let's go," I said finally. We walked across the street, hands in our pockets, moving like we belonged there. The front entrance had a security guard behind a desk, mid-20s, absorbed in his phone, AirPods in. He glanced up as we passed. "Here to visit a friend?" I said casually, not stopping. He nodded and went back to scrolling. We took the elevator to the third floor. The hallway was quiet, beige carpet, generic art on the walls. Unit 312 was at the end. I could hear faint music inside, jazz maybe, laughter. I tried the door handle, unlocked. Arrogance or carelessness, didn't matter. I pushed the door open. The scene was exactly what I'd expected, but seeing it in person hit differently. Jennifer and Derek were on the couch, wine glasses on the coffee table, his arm around her shoulders. She was laughing at something he'd said. They were both half-dressed, her shirt unbuttoned, his jeans unzipped. Comfortable. Familiar. They didn't hear us at first. Then Jennifer's eyes flicked to the door. Her face drained of color. "Evan," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. Derek shot up from the couch, stumbling over his own feet. "What the hell? Who are—" He started aggressively. "Sit down," I commanded. My voice was calm, deadly calm. Derek looked at me, then at Jake, 6'2", arms like tree trunks, expression carved from stone, and his bravado evaporated. He sat. Jennifer scrambled to button her shirt, her hands shaking. "Evan, what are you doing here? This is insane. You can't just—" She stammered frantically. "Can't just what?" I interrupted, stepping into the room. Jake closed behind me. "Can't walk in on my wife f***ing her coworker? Can't see what you've been doing every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 2 months?" Her mouth opened, closed. She tried denial first. "I don't know what you think you saw, but—" She began weakly. "Stop," I cut her off. I pulled out my phone, opened the photos Tony had sent me. I held it up. "I have pictures, Jennifer. I have GPS logs. I have your deleted texts. I know everything." Her face crumbled. The denial shifted to anger, her default when cornered. "You've been spying on me? Tracking my car? Going through my phone? That's illegal, Evan. That's—" She shrieked. "It's not illegal to track a car I co-own," I stated coldly. "It's not illegal to access a shared iCloud account. But you know what is illegal? Adultery. In this state, it's grounds for fault-based divorce, which is exactly what I'm filing." Derek finally found his voice. "Look, man, I didn't— This isn't—" He sputtered pathetically. I turned to face him directly. "You knew she was married. You knew she has a daughter. You did this anyway," I said, my voice flat and accusatory. He tried to stand, puffing out his chest in a weak display of masculinity. "You need to leave. This is my place. I'll call the cops if—" he threatened. "Go ahead," I replied evenly. "Call them. I'd love to explain to the police why I'm here. I'd also love to explain it to Carol Simmons, your boss, the one who's very interested in workplace ethics." Derek's face went pale, but then he made a mistake. He reached for his phone on the coffee table, probably planning to call building security or bluff his way out. Jake moved faster. He grabbed Derek's wrist mid-reach, twisted it sharply. The crack was audible, a wet, bone-deep sound. Derek screamed, a high-pitched, animalistic wail. He crumpled to the floor, clutching his arm, tears streaming down his face. "Jesus Christ!" Jennifer shrieked in horror. "You broke his arm. Evan, you brought your brother to assault someone? You're a psychopath. I'm calling the police." "Go ahead," I repeated calmly. "Call them. But before you do, let me explain what happens next." I stepped closer to her. She backed against the couch, eyes wide, mascara smudged. "Tomorrow morning you're being served with divorce papers. Adultery is cited as grounds. I have evidence, texts, photos, witness statements. Audrey Delgado is my attorney. Look her up. She doesn't lose," I explained methodically. Jennifer's breathing quickened. "Evan, wait. Let's talk about this," she pleaded desperately. "There's nothing to talk about," I said firmly. "I'm filing for full custody of Emma. You've been neglecting her to carry on this affair. I've documented that too. Carol Simmons? She's getting a full report Monday morning. Your family? Your friends? They'll all know by the weekend." "You can't do this," she protested weakly. "I already have," I replied coldly. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper. "You gambled, Jennifer. You thought you were smart enough to play me. You weren't. And now you're going to lose everything." Her face shifted, anger to panic, to something like desperation. "Please, Evan, think about Emma. Think about what this will do to her," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "I am thinking about Emma," I answered quietly. That's why she's not going to grow up watching her father get disrespected in his own home. I turned to Jake. We're done here, I said simply. Derek was still on the floor, whimpering, cradling his arm. Jennifer stood frozen, tears streaming down her face, mouth opening and closing like she was trying to find words that didn't exist. We walked out, didn't look back. In the truck, Jake glanced at me. You good? He asked with concern. Yeah, I answered, exhaling slowly. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline, the weight of what had just happened. I'm good. We drove back to my house. Jennifer's car was still at Derek's. I didn't care. When I got home, I found her bags already packed on the front porch. Audrey's assistant had handled it while we were gone, as planned. The locks were changed. Inside, the house was quiet. Emma was at my parents' house, safe, oblivious. At 11:43 p.m., Jennifer's car pulled into the driveway. She pounded on the door. Evan, open the door! You can't do this! This is my house, too! She screamed desperately. I sat in the living room, lights off, beer in hand. I didn't answer. She pounded for 20 minutes. Then she called. I didn't pick up. Then she texted, rage, then pleading, then threats. I blocked her number. Around midnight, she finally left. I sat alone in the dark, letting myself feel it, all of it. The rage, the grief, the betrayal, the satisfaction. I didn't cry. I just breathed. The next 2 weeks were a controlled demolition. Wednesday morning, Jennifer was served with divorce papers at her office. The process server handed her the envelope in the lobby, right in front of her co-workers. According to Audrey's investigator, she read the first page, went white, and locked herself in the bathroom for 30 minutes. By noon, her attorney, some bargain divorce lawyer she'd hired in a panic, called Audrey's office trying to negotiate. Audrey shut him down in under 5 minutes. Your client committed adultery, Audrey told me later, recounting the call with satisfaction. She has no leverage. She's not getting the house, she's not getting alimony, and she's sure as hell not getting primary custody. Her lawyer knows it. He's just doing damage control now. The legal side was moving fast, but the social fallout was even more brutal. Derek, predictably, didn't press charges for the broken arm. Probably because pressing charges would mean explaining why we were at his condo in the first place. It would mean his company, and his ex-wife, finding out about the affair. So he stayed quiet, went to the ER, got a cast, and lied to his co-workers about a fall. But HR didn't stay quiet. The anonymous email I'd sent a week earlier triggered an internal investigation. Within days, both Derek and Jennifer were called into separate meetings. The company had a strict policy against workplace relationships, especially between employees in the same department. Derek was a sales director. Jennifer reported to someone who reported to him. It was a textbook conflict of interest. Jennifer was let go on Friday. Performance issues, they called it officially. But everyone knew. Derek was put on probation. His commissions were frozen pending a full review. I heard through the grapevine that Carol Simmons personally oversaw the investigation and was not happy. Apparently, Derek had pulled this before, hitting on junior employees, blurring professional boundaries. This was the last straw. The social exile was swift. Jennifer's friends, mostly other moms from Emma's school, distanced themselves. Cheating was messy, but cheating and then losing your kid in court? That was something else. I didn't have to say a word. The truth spread on its own. Whispers in carpool lines, hushed conversations at PTA meetings. By contrast, I became the victim, the loyal husband who was betrayed, the devoted father fighting for his daughter. I didn't lean into it. I didn't need to. People saw the truth. Jennifer tried to reach out multiple times, texts, voicemails, showing up at my office. She alternated between rage and manipulation. You ruined my life, Evan. I hope you're happy. I made a mistake. Please, think about Emma. We can fix this. You're going to regret this. My lawyer says I have rights. I blocked her number. All communication went through Audrey. Custody was the hardest part, not for me, but for Emma. The court granted me temporary full custody based on the evidence of Jennifer's affair and her inability to provide a stable home. She'd moved into a cramped studio apartment, no job, no savings. Jennifer got supervised visitation every other weekend, 2 hours at a neutral location with a court-appointed supervisor present. Emma didn't understand. Not fully. She knew Mommy and Daddy weren't living together anymore. She knew Mommy was sad and cried a lot during their visits, but I didn't tell her why. I wouldn't poison her against her own mother. "Why doesn't Mommy live with us anymore?" Emma asked me one night at bedtime, her small voice confused. I knelt beside her bed, brushing hair from her forehead. "Sometimes grown-ups make choices that mean they can't live together anymore. But Mommy and I both love you very much. That will never change," I explained gently. "Is it my fault?" she asked, her eyes welling up. "No, sweetheart. It's not your fault. Not even a little bit," I reassured her firmly. She hugged me, her small arms tight around my neck. I held her until she fell asleep. Derek, meanwhile, had his own problems. His ex-wife found out about the affair. I don't know how, but I suspect someone tipped her off and used it against him in their custody battle. He lost visitation with his own kids, supervised visits only, pending a psych evaluation. Karma. 6 weeks after the confrontation, I stood in my backyard, beer in hand, watching the sunset. Emma was inside, watching cartoons. The divorce was moving forward. Jennifer was working part-time at a retail store trying to scrape together rent. I didn't hate her anymore. I just didn't care. 6 months later, I sat on my back porch, beer in hand, watching the sunset bleed orange and pink across the horizon. Emma was inside, humming along to some cartoon about talking animals. The sound of her laughter drifted through the screen door, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks ago. Jennifer had signed everything Audrey put in front of her. She didn't have a choice. The evidence was ironclad. She got supervised visitation every other weekend. 2 hours, neutral location, a court monitor taking notes. She was trying to rebuild, I'd heard. Part-time job at a department store, a 1-bedroom apartment on the east side. Therapy, maybe. I didn't keep tabs on her anymore. I didn't need to. Jake stopped by one afternoon, bringing Emma a new bike for her 7th birthday. We sat on the porch while she rode circles in the driveway, her training wheels wobbling. "Do you regret it?" Jake asked suddenly, cracking open a beer. "The way you did it?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "No," I answered honestly after a long pause. "She had a choice. She made it. I just made sure she faced the consequences." Jake nodded slowly. "Fair enough," he replied, accepting my answer without judgment. I hadn't dated, hadn't even thought about it. My focus was Emma, work, and rebuilding my sense of self. I started hitting the gym more, spent weekends with Jake and a couple of old friends from college, took Emma to the park, to movies, to the zoo, small, normal things that felt like miracles after months of chaos. I wasn't trying to find myself. I already knew who I was. I was a man who didn't get played twice, a father who would burn the world down to protect his daughter, a builder who'd rebuilt his life from the ashes of someone else's betrayal. That night, after Emma's bath, I tucked her into bed. She was clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit, eyes already heavy with sleep. "Daddy?" she murmured sleepily. "Yeah, sweetheart?" I responded softly. "Are you happy?" she asked innocently. I paused, looking down at her small face, so innocent, so trusting. "I'm okay," I said carefully. "And that's enough." She smiled and closed her eyes, satisfied with my answer. I kissed her forehead, turned off the light, and closed the door quietly. Downstairs, I sat in the dark living room. No TV, no music, just the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of crickets outside. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt whole. For the first time in a year, the rage was gone. The betrayal had scarred, but it didn't define me anymore. I'd stood my ground. I'd protected my daughter. I'd refused to be destroyed. They say revenge doesn't fix anything. Maybe they're right, but it sure as hell made me feel whole again.